I tightened my hold on my tablet as Devin leaned forward, cutting me off mid-sentence for the 17th time that afternoon. "What Autumn means to say," he added with that polished, practiced assurance he always used, "is that our user acquisition costs need adjusting, but we can set the specifics aside for now." A low wave of murmured agreement drifted around the table, heads nodding as if this exchange were normal, as if nothing had just been taken from me again. No one reacted. No one acknowledged it. I had spent 3 relentless weeks refining those projections, nights stretching long past midnight, meals forgotten, eyes burning as I combed through databases and stress-tested assumptions to build a financial strategy precise enough to rescue a company already taking on water. Every figure had weight, every conclusion was earned, and still, it vanished into the room without leaving a mark. Beneath my printed notes, hidden from everyone else, I drew another small line. 17 interruptions in 90 minutes. My male colleagues? Not a single one. When our CEO announced that our $80 million investor would be joining the call the following week, something inside me settled into resolve. That night, instead of replaying the meeting, I reviewed state law. Single-party consent. Legal to record. The next morning, I arrived early, placed my phone on the table, opened the recording app, and waited. What unfolded in that meeting shifted everything, not just for me, but for every woman who has ever been spoken over in a boardroom. Before I tell you how it ends, understand this. What you're about to hear isn't revenge. It's accountability inside a system designed to quietly mute voices like mine. If you've ever been interrupted, dismissed, or watched your ideas resurface under someone else's name, you already know why this matters. Stay until the end, because the outcome stunned everyone involved, including me. My name is Autumn Kelly. I'm a financial strategist with a master's degree in economics and 10 years of experience turning unstable companies into profitable ones. My previous venture returned 3 times the initial investment through a revenue diversification model I built from the ground up. I don't just read numbers, I recognize patterns others overlook. 6 months before that recorded meeting, I was recruited by a rising tech startup called DataStream. They created AI-powered analytics tools for mid-sized businesses, and while the product was impressive, the financial foundation was chaotic. Cash burn accelerating, revenue targets slipping, and their Series B round delayed again and again. Ellis Grant, the CEO, convinced me to join with promises of autonomy and real influence. "Your expertise is exactly what we need," he told me. "We want you to rebuild our monetization strategy." I believed him. I left a stable role because I saw DataStream's potential. The first weeks reinforced that belief. During onboarding, people listened. They took notes. They nodded when I pointed out inefficiencies and early opportunities. That changed the moment I moved from theory to execution. During my first full leadership presentation, I noticed something unsettling. Each time I reached a critical point, someone cut in. "Let's revisit that later. We need to focus on immediate priorities." Interesting, but maybe too aggressive for where we are. At first, I doubted myself. Maybe I wasn't clear enough. Maybe I needed to be firmer, more concise. I revised my slides, rehearsed obsessively, simplified everything. Nothing changed. 3 months in, I started tracking every interruption. The pattern was undeniable. While my male peers averaged 0 to 2 interruptions, mine consistently climbed into double digits. The main offenders were Devin Marsh, our marketing director, Wyatt Jennings, the CTO, and occasionally Ellis himself. What made it worse was watching pieces of my strategy reappear weeks later, reframed and presented by them as their own insights. The company continued to struggle because they were only using fragments of a system that required cohesion. Eventually, I addressed it directly. After one particularly exhausting meeting, I pulled Devin aside. "I noticed you interrupted my presentation several times today," I said evenly. "I'd appreciate being able to finish my points before discussion starts." His expression shifted from confusion to casual dismissal. "Did I? I was just trying to keep us on track. These meetings drag." 30 minutes earlier, he had spoken uninterrupted for 15 minutes about marketing ideas barely tied to quarterly objectives. I tried other approaches, speaking more forcefully, sending materials in advance, asking Ellis for dedicated presentation time. Nothing worked. The interruptions escalated. The breaking point came during my quarterly forecast presentation. 17 interruptions later, not one person had heard my complete analysis. 3 weeks of work waved aside. We were 3 weeks from our final pitch for $80 million, funding the company desperately needed, and leadership was ignoring financial realities that could determine survival. That night, sleep never came. DataStream still had potential, but without a solid financial strategy, it wouldn't last the year. This was no longer just about my frustration. It was about the company's survival and the livelihoods of 67 employees. I reviewed the recording laws again. Still legal. I never intended to release anything publicly. I just needed evidence, something tangible to force a real conversation with Ellis or the board. The next morning, the conference room buzzed with nervous energy. That investment would either save us or quietly end everything. Ellis kept adjusting his tie. Others rehearsed talking points. When Preston Hall appeared on the video call, introductions began. He was known for bluntness and zero tolerance for inefficiency, his firm backing some of the most successful tech companies of the past decade. At 62, with silver hair and sharp gray eyes, he seemed to evaluate everything instantly. "Let's begin," he said after brief pleasantries. "I've reviewed your materials, but I want to hear where things stand today." Ellis delivered his overview. Wyatt followed with a development update. Neither was interrupted. Then Ellis introduced me. And now Autumn will give us a brief financial overview. I began, fully aware the recording app was running. I outlined our current position and projections based on the strategy I'd been developing. 3 slides in, Devin leaned forward. "Sorry to jump in, but that projection feels optimistic given last quarter."
We should probably highlight more conservative estimates. I acknowledged him and continued. 2 minutes later, Wyatt cut in about infrastructure costs. Again, I adjusted and moved forward. As I approached the most critical section, Nolan attempted another interruption about user growth. Then Preston cleared his throat. "I'm noticing a pattern here." The room froze. "Your financial strategist has been interrupted 3 times in under 10 minutes. I've been counting." His gaze moved deliberately across the screen. "This mirrors what I've seen in previous meetings, and it's exactly why we're reconsidering our position with DataStream." No one spoke. Ellis looked pale. "When organizations silence their most valuable voices," Preston continued, "they miss critical insight. I specifically requested Miss Kelly's involvement after learning she led TechVent's turnaround last year. That's why I was concerned when she barely spoke on earlier calls." My heart pounded as I realized what was happening. "I'd like to hear Miss Kelly's full financial strategy without interruption," Preston said, "and afterward I'd like an explanation for why this pattern exists here." Ellis stammered his agreement. For the next 20 minutes, uninterrupted for the first time, I presented my entire strategy. I detailed inefficiencies, necessary adjustments, and projected outcomes, how we could triple revenue in 18 months while reducing operational costs by 23%. When I finished, Preston nodded slowly. "That's exactly the strategic thinking I expected." "Ellis, why is this a first time I'm hearing the full approach? Miss Kelly has been here 6 months." Ellis struggled to explain gradual implementation and balancing perspectives. "Some perspectives," Preston replied, "clearly matter more than others. Here's my position. DataStream has strong technology and deeply flawed leadership dynamics. I'm prepared to extend the full $80 million investment with conditions. First, Miss Kelly becomes Chief Strategy Officer, reporting directly to me. Second, your leadership team completes communication and inclusion training with quarterly evaluations. Third, you execute her strategy in full, not in pieces." Ellis agreed immediately. "I'm not finished," Preston added. "I'm also appointing Miss Kelly to our advisory board with separate compensation." I sat stunned. Validation, promotion, direct access, and security all at once. "Does that work for you, Miss Kelly?" he asked. Finding my voice, I said yes. "Excellent. Paperwork by tomorrow." When the call ended, the room stayed silent. Ellis offered strained congratulations. Devin and Wyatt avoided my eyes. The recording app was still running as I gathered my materials and stepped out into a hallway buzzing with hushed voices. Back in my office, I closed the door and took my first full breath in hours. My phone buzzed with an email from Preston's assistant requesting a private meeting the next morning. This was genuinely happening. Ellis knocked 30 minutes later, his usual confident presence replaced by something more wary. "Do you have a moment?" he asked. I motioned to the chair across from me. "Of course." He sat down, smoothing his tie again and again. "I want to apologize for any miscommunications that may have happened during your time here. We value your contributions immensely." "Thank you," I replied, keeping my expression calm. "I appreciate that." "I'm wondering," he said, leaning slightly forward, "was this something you coordinated with Preston before the meeting?" I met his eyes directly. "No, I was just as surprised as everyone else." He nodded slowly, clearly absorbing this. "And the recording device on your phone during the meeting?" My pulse quickened. He had noticed. "Single-party consent is legal in this state, Ellis. I've been tracking the interruption pattern for months with no acknowledgement. The recording was for my personal reference." His eyes widened slightly. "I understand. Are you intending to use this recording in some way?" "That depends entirely on what happens next," I replied evenly. "I came to DataStream because I believe in its potential. I still do, but I need the freedom to execute the strategies I was hired to design." Ellis nodded again, rising to his feet. "You'll receive your new contract by tomorrow. And Autumn, I truly am sorry." After he stepped out, I stayed in silence, absorbing everything that had just unfolded. This wasn't how I envisioned my career path. I'd never wanted authority through ultimatums or outside intervention. I simply wanted to be heard. My phone buzzed again, a text from Phoebe, my closest friend outside work. "How did the big meeting go?" I typed back, "You won't believe it. Wine tonight? I need to decompress." At my apartment later, I walked Phoebe through everything as we shared a bottle of Cabernet. I didn't expect any of this, I concluded. I just wanted proof of what was happening. Phoebe, a litigation attorney who'd fought her own workplace battles, shook her head. "You didn't create this situation. They did. Preston just recognized what was happening and valued your work enough to step in. But now I have to return and lead people who resent me." "Or," she countered, "you get to transform a company culture with the protection of the primary investor. Do you realize how rare that chance is?" I sipped my wine thoughtfully. I keep thinking about the recording. Part of me wants to erase it now that it served its purpose. Another part says, keep it as insurance. "Keep it," Phoebe insisted without hesitation, "not as a weapon, but as protection. You're about to enforce major changes that will disrupt long-standing power structures. Some people won't accept that quietly." The next morning, I met with Preston via video call. In daylight, removed from the tension of the previous meeting, I could better see his sharp intelligence. "Miss Kelly, may I call you Autumn?" he began.
"Of course. I want to be candid about yesterday," he continued. "Your interruptions weren't the only factor in us reconsidering our investment." I waited, intrigued. "For 3 months, we've been evaluating DataStream's leadership environment. Ellis is brilliant with product vision, but has created an echo chamber that rewards confidence over competence. When we heard they'd hired you, the strategist behind TechVent's remarkable turnarounds, we were encouraged. But in later meetings, we noticed you were routinely sidelined." "You were testing them," I realized out loud. Preston nodded. "We needed to see whether they'd actually leverage your expertise. They failed that test again and again. Yesterday's meeting simply verified what we already suspected. Why not just pull your investment?" "Because DataStream's technology is extraordinary, and now it has you." He leaned in slightly. "I don't make decisions based on social justice, Autumn. I make them based on ROI. Companies that silence their strongest thinkers make poor financial choices. It's that straightforward." By the end of the day, I had signed both agreements. CSO at DataStream, with a considerable raise in equity package, plus a seat on Preston's advisory board at triple my former consulting rate. The following Monday, Ellis held an all-hands meeting to share the investment news and my promotion. The announcement was framed solely as positive organizational progress, no mention of the conditions that prompted it. Some employees looked genuinely happy. Others, especially Devin and Lyatt, wore stiff, restrained smiles. After the announcement, I detailed the strategic adjustments we would be rolling out immediately. These changes may feel significant, but they're essential for our growth and long-term stability, I stated. I'll be meeting with each department to go over how these shifts impact your specific functions. The true work began that afternoon. I started with marketing, Devin's domain. I stepped into the conference room to find him already seated with his team, his face carefully neutral. "Thank you for making time for this," I began, distributing packets. "I want to discuss how the updated strategy affects marketing priorities and budget distribution." Devin cleared his throat. "Before we begin, I think it's important to acknowledge that some of these changes may disrupt campaigns we've already invested in." "You're absolutely right," I replied. "That's why we're having this discussion. I need to understand what's underway before finalizing departmental targets." For the next hour, I listened more than I spoke, taking notes on current projects, team concerns, and potential points of resistance. When Devin tried to dismiss certain changes as unrealistic or overly aggressive, I asked precise questions that required detailed answers, rather than vague statements. "Can you explain which specific metrics make you think this target is unachievable? Or what additional resources would make this timeline feasible?" By the end of the meeting, Devin's team was engaged and offering constructive suggestions. He remained seated as everyone else filed out, growing increasingly silent. "This feels personal, Autumn," he said once we were alone. I met his gaze steadily. "It's not personal, Devin, it's strategic. The company needs to pivot to survive, and marketing plays a critical role in that shift." "You recorded that meeting, didn't you, with Preston?" I neither confirmed nor denied it. "What matters now is moving forward. I value your expertise and need your department fully aligned with our new direction. Are you willing to partner on this?" He studied me for a long moment before nodding once. "I'll align with the strategy." Similar discussions unfolded across departments over the following days. Some embraced the changes eagerly, others accepted them reluctantly. Wyatt proved particularly resistant, questioning every technical allocation in the new budget. During our third heated debate about development resources, he finally erupted. "This is ridiculous. You're dismantling systems that took years to build because you got lucky with one investor who happens to like you?" The room went silent as his words lingered. "Is that what you think happened, Wyatt? That I got lucky?" I asked quietly. "You know what I mean," he said, refusing to back down. "Preston took a shine on you, and suddenly you're dictating everything?" I opened my laptop and pulled up a spreadsheet. "Let me show you something." I turned the screen toward him. "These are the development costs for the past 18 months, mapped against customer acquisition and retention. We're spending 43% more than industry standards to maintain features that fewer than 7% of our users regularly access." I clicked to the next tab. "Here's the impact of redirecting those resources toward the features our highest value customers actually use daily. Projected revenue increase of 28% within 6 months with reduced development overhead." Wyatt stared at the numbers, his objections faltering. "This isn't about Preston favoring me," I continued. "It's about implementing data-driven decisions that were ignored for months. You're a brilliant technical mind, Wyatt. I need that brilliance focused on the right priorities." Resistance didn't vanish overnight, but it gradually evolved into grudging respect as my strategy began delivering results. By the end of the first quarter, under the new approach, customer retention had improved by 16%, acquisition costs had dropped by 22%, and our runway had extended significantly. Ellis, to his credit, became an unexpected ally. During our weekly check-ins, he actively sought my input and publicly supported my decisions. After one particularly successful product launch, he stopped by my office. "I was wrong about you," he said simply. "Or rather, I was right initially when I recruited you, then wrong when I failed to listen." "Thank you for acknowledging that," I replied. "The board is impressed with our progress. They've mentioned expanding your role further." He hesitated. "I wanted you to hear it from me first." 6 months after that recorded meeting, DataStream had been transformed. We weren't just surviving, we were thriving. The company culture had shifted too. Meeting protocols now included designated presentation time free from interruptions, and the leadership team had grown to include more diverse voices. Devin eventually became a strong partner in executing our marketing strategy, though our relationship remained strictly professional. Wyatt took longer to adapt, but ultimately flourished when given clear technical direction aligned with business goals. As for me, my dual roles as CISO and advisory board member opened doors I hadn't anticipated. Other companies in Preston's portfolio sought my consultation. Industry publications requested interviews about our turnaround strategy, and I was invited to speak at conferences on financial leadership. The recording that had started everything remained securely stored, unused. Its existence had served its purpose without ever being played. True vindication came during our annual investor meeting, exactly 1 year after that pivotal call. I presented our results to a room of stakeholders, including Preston and several potential investors. Under Autumn's strategic direction, Ellis explained, DataStream has increased revenue by 67% year over year, while decreasing operational costs by 31%. Our customer base has grown by 43%, with improved retention metrics across all segments. Preston nodded approvingly as I walked through the details. When I finished, he addressed the room. When we invested in DataStream, we were investing in potential. Today, we're seeing that potential realized through clear strategic vision and disciplined execution. He turned to me. Miss Kelly has demonstrated what happens when companies amplify their best voices rather than silencing them. After the meeting, Preston pulled me aside. I've been observing your work across our portfolio companies. The advisory role has been valuable, but I think we can do more. What did you have in mind? I asked. We're launching a new fund focused on undervalued companies with strong technical foundations but flawed strategic execution. Exactly the profile you excel with. I'd like you to consider joining as a managing partner. The offer was unexpected and life-changing, a partnership in a venture capital fund with significant carry percentage and decision-making authority, which would mean leaving DataStream. I said I needed time to process. Yes, though we'd want you to transition gradually and perhaps maintain an advisory role. Ellis has grown considerably as a leader under your influence. I reflected on the past year, from being repeatedly silenced to being offered a position where companies would actively seek my voice, from counting interruptions to shaping investment strategies across multiple organizations. I told Preston I'd like to think about it. Of course, take the time you need. That evening, I sat in my apartment reviewing the offer details. My phone buzzed with a text from Phoebe. Heard through the grapevine, your meeting went well today. Celebration dinner. Over dinner, I explained Preston's offer. So you'd be his equal in this new fund? She asked. A junior partner initially, but yes, with a clear path to equal standing based on performance metrics. Phoebe raised her glass. To the woman who turned 17 interruptions into a venture capital partnership. I knew you were brilliant, but even I didn't see this coming. I clinked my glass against hers. Neither did I. I just wanted to be heard. And now everyone's listening, she said with a smile. The following week, I accepted Preston's offer with a 12-month transition plan for DataStream. When I announced my eventual departure to the leadership team, the reaction spoke volumes about how much had changed. Ellis expressed genuine disappointment, but supported my decision. Devin acknowledged how much he had learned under my strategy, and even Wyatt offered congratulations, noting that the technical infrastructure changes had positioned the company for long-term success. In my final week at DataStream before transitioning to my advisory role, Ellis organized a company celebration for our successful year. During his speech, he said something that resonated deeply. Sometimes the most valuable thing we can do as leaders is recognize when we need to listen instead of speak. Autumn taught us that lesson, and DataStream is stronger for it. Later that evening, as the celebration wound down, I found myself alone in the conference room where that fateful recorded meeting had taken place. I retrieved my phone and located the audio file that had never been played. My finger hovered over the delete button. After a moment's reflection, I pressed delete and confirmed. The evidence was no longer necessary. The results spoke for themselves. Stepping into my new role at the venture fund, I carried with me the most valuable lesson from DataStream's experience. True power isn't about silencing others or speaking the loudest. It's about creating environments where every valuable voice can be heard. In the 2 years since, our fund has invested in 27 companies, focusing on those with diverse leadership teams, consistently outperforming industry averages. It turns out that funding companies that listen to all their best minds is not only ethically sound, but financially shrewd. I still have the notebook where I tallied those 17 interruptions. It sits on my desk as a reminder of where this journey began. Sometimes, when evaluating a potential investment, I observe meeting dynamics, noting who speaks and who gets silenced. It's become one of our most reliable indicators of a company's potential. The recording may be gone, but its impact remains in my career, in DataStream's transformed culture, and in every investment decision I now influence. That's the thing about finding your voice. Once you truly have it, you never need to prove it with silence. If you've ever been interrupted, overlooked, or had your ideas credited to someone else, I hope this story reminds you that your voice matters. Your ideas deserve to be heard fully, not in fragments between interruptions. Have you experienced something similar in your workplace? What strategies helped you navigate it? Share your stories in the comments below. Your experiences could help someone currently struggling to be heard. If this resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe for more stories about workplace dynamics and professional growth. Every like helps this reach someone who needs to hear it today. And remember, sometimes the most powerful action isn't speaking louder, but documenting carefully. Your evidence becomes your advocate when you finally get the chance to be heard.